Well, it looks like he's going to continue his conversation. Good afternoon and welcome everybody to the Little Texas Road Sidewalk Project meeting. My name is Wilmer Melton. I'm Assistant City Manager here with the City of Kannapolis. And thank you all for coming out this evening. We got some exciting information that we want to share with you regarding the project. Our project team has been working for quite some time on the overall project, and we want to share our progress with you this evening as to where we are and an update in terms of timeline on the project. I think there were some questions early on about specific property impacts. Now, we're not going to be able to address the specific individual property impacts this afternoon, but we can give you an overview, and then as we progress on the project and understand those specific impacts to the property, there will be agents that'll come out and they'll speak with the individual property owners at the appropriate time on what true impacts that we're going to need on your property. I'd like to introduce our project team. Obviously, the City of Kannapolis is part of this. We have on the screen that's before you, Seppi, who is our design team working on this project. And we have Michael, Michelle, and Alexander that are on the screen with us. Beth Hassenfritz works with the City of Kannapolis. She's my project manager that's on the project. And I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention our other project team member, the North Carolina Department of Transportation. And I don't know if we have anybody from them here this evening. So, but do appreciate everyone here this evening. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over at this point. Well, I guess I'll go through it real quick. But we've got a overall format that we'll have. You can see that before you hear that we'll give an intro to the project, discuss specific needs as it relates to the project, and then details on the overall. I think there's some questions a little bit earlier about that, about what those property impacts mean. Would we return fences? Again, all those are things that we'll talk about when we have those individual meetings with each property owner. But Michelle and I think Michael are going to go through the overall project and talk a little bit about it, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions at the close. So if you do have questions, again, please hold them to the end of the meeting, and we're going to try to go through those. We want to make sure we have everything on record. So, Michelle?
All right. Thank you, Wilbur. Hello, everyone, remotely or in person. One thing to note, if you are remote, there's a chat box. It's available to you if you scroll around on the bottom of your screen. There's a chat function. You can open that, and there's some instructions in there for you to put your name and your information so that we can keep record of who attended the meeting. And that's also where we need you to place your questions if you have any. We'd like to hold questions until the end of the meeting. We may answer a lot of your questions during the meeting, so we're just trying to be efficient. So with that, next slide, please, Alex. So the basics of the project involve a sidewalk, and that's really the goal from Lane Street all the way down to Dale Earnhardt Boulevard. And as you can tell on the map on the right side of your screen, there's sections that don't exist today. And what you're seeing on there are the new sections. So what's in red is what we're proposing to build, and what's not shown in red is already there. So we're filling in the gaps so that you can walk from Lane Street all the way down to Dale Earnhardt with the completed project. And that's about 1.6 miles. We're also going to be realigning Ruth Avenue in the Little Texas intersection, and Mike's going to go through some details about that in a minute. We're also adding a pedestrian refuge and modifying the existing crosswalk at Forest Park Elementary, and he'll be showing you some information about that as well. And we're also adding a new pedestrian bridge over the creek there. It's called Chambers Branch, and he'll be showing you information about that as well. Next slide, please. So basically the purpose of this project is to improve pedestrian safety and mobility. As you know, walking through there now, you go between sidewalk and off sidewalk, and that's not very safe. And there's some additional areas in there that aren't very good to get around. So really, we're trying to improve the safety and mobility for folks that aren't using cars in that area. And I know you guys have been wanting this for a long time. So it's about time we're finally getting there. So with that, next slide, and then I'm going to have Mike take over.
Thanks, Michelle, and thanks everyone for joining us tonight. Really excited about the project. So kind of going to follow the same format that Michelle started. We're going to work from north to south. We're going to talk about the existing conditions, the proposed improvements, and key in on some of the constraints throughout the corridor. So we'll start here with Ruth Avenue. some kind of the key takeaways here for Ruth Avenue. If you see on the screen, the pavement's in bad condition. The entire roadway is in bad condition. So it's 2-lane, undivided, narrow, kind of 9-foot travel lanes, a mix of ditch section and a little bit of curb and gutter. No pedestrian features out there, no sidewalk, no bike lanes, and 35 miles per hour. That's the existing conditions there. Next slide. So here you can see the proposed roadway section for Ruth Avenue. Again, this would be from Little Texas up to Lane Street. A little bit of widening, going from 9-foot travel lanes to 10-foot travel lanes to make it a little safer. Adding curb and gutter and sidewalk on the east side to continue that network. And since Ruth Avenue is in such poor condition, this will be a full reconstruction of the roadway on Ruth Avenue. So construction would be basically take everything out in the roadway that's there now and rebuild back from the stone up. Next slide. Continuing on southward onto Little Texas, similar roadway, and then it's 2-lane undivided, similar mix of ditch and curb and gutter, more curb and gutter here though. You do have some sidewalks along this section, one crosswalk at the elementary school near Forest Park Drive. And again, no bike lanes, no multi-use paths, and it's still posted 35 miles per hour. Of note, I didn't mention it on Ruth. Ruth is city maintained, and Little Texas is NCDOT maintained. A little bit of difference there. Next slide, please. So key in a little bit more on the existing sidewalk network. Here you can see the existing sidewalks on the right that are out there throughout the corridor. And these have been built over the years and created the gaps as development filled in. They would build their frontage and include the sidewalks there. So as Michelle alluded earlier, this project is going to connect all those up to create a pedestrian network along the corridor. Next slide. I want to go through the roadway sections along Little Texas now. So as you can see on the right, these are the proposed areas of improvements that we're showing here, and that would match this typical section that's on the left. So through this section, we'll be maintaining a minimum 11-foot travel lane along Little Texas. We'll be installing curb and gutter and sidewalk on the east side of Little Texas. Where existing sidewalk exists, we'll tie to that, but the majority of the corridor, once the project is complete, will look like what's on your screen. Next slide. There is one section south of Ontario Drive that does have some physical constraints just based on the existing topography of the land. If you travel this corridor a lot, maybe you've noticed, maybe you haven't. If you notice, the road falls off quite a bit south of Ontario Drive. So through this section, to avoid some property constraints, we are looking at a retaining wall situation. And here you can see a rendering of what that wall will likely look similar to. In this area, we'll have some guardrail and some railing to protect both vehicles and pedestrians from the wall. So this section is a little bit constrained, and one that we felt like was important to point out in tonight's meeting. Next slide, please. Continuing south down to Chambers Branch, this is where the new pedestrian bridge will be located. The existing roadway bridge was not wide enough to install a sidewalk on it, and it was out of the scope of this project, and quite frankly out of the budget, to install a new roadway bridge that would accommodate sidewalk. That's something that the city will save for NCDOT to do on their roadway at some point. So here we are installing a pedestrian bridge to the east of the existing roadway bridge. It'll be about, I think it's about 20 feet off the existing roadway bridge. You can see on your screen there kind of where it would be. It's going to be about 80 feet long and about the same elevation as the existing roadway bridge. Not too much different there. But next slide, on this next slide, you can kind of see a little bit better where the elevation will be. So it's not terribly tall. There are some utilities that will be impacted and relocated as part of this project to place the bridge, but it will be a nice addition, and even for the future, if there's any greenway connection along the stream corridor there. One thing I did want to call out on the bridge. You may have seen them before. It's a prefab bridge. If you've been to a park or a greenway, you can go back. You may have seen one of these. So it'll be very similar to that. Next slide. So the crosswalk at Forest Park Drive at the elementary school. So as you can see on the right side there, we have a screenshot kind of zoomed in on the existing aerial, and you can see the crosswalk coming across. It's a kind of your normal crosswalk. So one of the things that this project is going to do is going to upgrade that crossing to provide a little bit more safety. If you look up in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, there's a pedestrian refuge up there, which will likely be very similar to what is installed along this corridor. This, provides some safety benefit in that you only have to cross one lane at a time. And if you do get stuck out there in the middle of the road, you do have some protection inside the median, whereas now it's just a painted island. So this is going to be really important for those who walk to school. And now it's likely not safe enough to walk to school. There may not be sidewalk in the area, but certainly after this project is completed, this corridor is going to be a really walkable corridor. And those of you who live along the corridor, who have children who attend the school, will be able to make that trip much safer. Next slide, please. So we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about the realignment of the Ruth Avenue and Little Texas intersection. So currently, Little Texas is the through move, meaning there's no stop sign or no stop that has to occur on Little Texas traveling from south to north. With this project, the intersection is going to be realigned to make the Ruth Avenue to Little Texas and vice versa the through move. And part of that is there's a future signal going in at Lane Street. So the projected traffic movements will likely be from Little Texas over to Ruth Avenue to the signal at Lane, and then you'll go north on Lane or south on Lane. But with that change coming and the through move, the desire was to make this the through move so that you would not have to stop at the end of Ruth to turn onto Little Texas. That's really the time savings that you're going to gain here, because of making a right off of Little Texas onto Ruth would have been a non-stop control move anyways. It's really the turn from Ruth onto Little Texas where you're saving the time. So as you can see at the top of the screen, where Little Texas continues off the screen, that little segment also gets realigned, and it will tee into Ruth Avenue where the stop sign is shown there. So a little bit different configuration out there. All right, next slide. So project schedule moving, kind of where we are today and moving forward. So today, public meeting, January 26th. And this is tied, so all this schedule is tied to NCDOT's funding of the project. So it was, as a lot of you know, we've had a pandemic and some slowdowns, and that has impacted DOT. So all of the project timeframes have moved out. So the current timeframe for this project and the funding available is for funding for acquisition to be available in summer of 2021, and then the construction funding becomes available in summer of 2023. So a little bit of time between right-of-way acquisition, and that's the beginning of right-of-way acquisition. So it's not the end of it, that's the beginning. So a little bit of time between there, about a year and a half from the time that the city starts acquiring right-of-way till they can go to construction. And I'll turn it over to Michelle to finish it up now.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So thank you for participating, anyone that's in the room or online. At this point, we are going to open it up for questions. So next slide, please, Alex. Thank you. So things to note. February 9th is the deadline for commenting. The City of Kannapolis is the folks you need to send your comments to, and Beth or Elizabeth Hassan-Fritz. Email is shown there up on the screen. That's who you should send your comments to. We need to have them in writing to make sure that we document and record it for DOT purposes, since this is a DOT funded project. And at this point, I'd like to see if there's anyone with any questions The chat box, by the way, that's been available to you is where we would appreciate you putting your contact information if you're viewing this online. And I have it open now and I'm not seeing any questions in the chat box. So if you have any in the room, I guess that's where we should start. Wilbur?
All right. Thanks, everybody. I have a couple questions that are before me. I'll read those. The first question I have is from Miss Sophia Wilkerson, and she lives at 314 Esther Circle. She's jotted some notes down, and I shared with her that I'll paraphrase what she has here. But she wanted to show her appreciation for the project on behalf of the Little Texas Road Community Watch Association. I think they're in their 25th anniversary. Is that right, Ms. Wilkerson? And I think they're all excited about the start of this project in 2023, and that this corridor is used for a quality of life issue for all the residents that are along that area, and they're excited about using that for exercise and certainly the ability to be able to walk back and forth to school or neighbors' homes or what have you. So I think there's a lot of appreciation on behalf of the community to see this project start as soon as possible. Did I miss anything? All right. That's the first question, and I'll pass that so that we'll have it. The next question I have is from Robert Mack, and Mr. Mack asked, will these improvements help to the flooding issues of water flowing into and between Dale Earnhardt Boulevard and the bridge? So, and Mr. Mack is located, he's relatively close to the school. And I'll say this, with the curb and gutter, and Mike, Michelle, you guys can probably answer, we'll be channeling some of that stormwater as a part of the project. So obviously, whenever we capture it with the gutter, we'll strategically locate the storm drains at locations where they'll discharge to the appropriate locations. So you won't have the direct sheet flow, but where water would normally go is where it's going to continue to go. Correct, team?
Yeah, I'll let Michael answer that.
Yeah, correct. So with the installation of the curb and gutter, so it will, if the flooding is occurring in the ditches, that should be alleviated where we're installing curb and gutter. I'm not sure exactly where he's referring to, but I'm looking at it now. So coming down the hill, all that would be in curb and gutter, and we'll be piping that to the outfall. I would say there should be some improvement, but since I don't know exactly what you're talking about, I can't say that there definitely will be, but I would anticipate it to improve.
Mr. Mack, knowing where your property is located, 102 Vantage.
Okay.
Do you guys see that? I suspect and again, knowing your property, that channeling that water and appropriately discharging it at the right location, I think it'll probably help you. Right now, you see a lot of sheet flow that's coming off the ribbon pavement design of Little Texas Road and the other streets. Now, certainly curb and gutter won't be on Vantage or the other side streets, but coming directly off of Little Texas Road, that water will be captured and channeled. So it should help your situation.
Yeah, it looks like the ditch is fairly shallow there near his property, near the school. So yeah, the water that's currently going in that ditch won't be there anymore. We're collecting it and then outletting it at the outfall. So yeah, I would anticipate seeing less.
So I hope that answers your question. All right, the next question I have is from Amos McClory. And his question is regarding the bridge. If it has to be widened, how long will it take? And what will the detour be? And I think we probably answered that in the beginning, that we aren't planning to widen the actual vehicular traffic bridge. So, but now there may be some impacts where we have lane closures doing some of the work. I'll let the team answer other specific questions, but I'm certain that we'll probably have some of that, but we aren't going to be taking the bridge out and widening it and detouring traffic.
Yeah, before you answer that, Mike, I'd like to just comment that someone, Theron's Smotherson, asked a question online about if there at any point would their traffic be cut off to Little Texas Road completely, I guess would be the question.
Correct. And no, there's no permanent closures. There's, even during construction, it would remain open. There may be work zones that would be a 1-lane work zone with a flagger, so they can build the curb and gutter and pipe networks and everything. But the road will remain open at all times.
Okay, no, plans not to close it, but we may have lane closures. Are there any other questions? Those are all the written comments that I have. Are there other ones?
There's no more online.
So, Michelle and Michael, there's a question regarding, and this is from Ms. Wilkerson. She asked the question that she saw the start date of the 2023, but how long do we anticipate the project to take? What's the duration of construction?
So it's a pretty long project, and with Ruth being a full rebuild, I think, you can probably anticipate at least 12 months. You're probably looking more along maybe a 16 to 18 month time frame. And and that won't be, throughout the entire project, the entire time. It'll be it'll be kind of a moving construction realistically. So probably a little over a year and a half.
One of the key things to remember when we start projects like this is it all depends upon the time of the year that we can get started. The availability of funds, if we're starting later in the year and then we have to work through the winter, there's a time period that there's kind of, if you will, blackout days where the contractor's not able to work just due to weather conditions. As you can see today, you've had rain conditions that delay things. So, if we can start in favorable conditions and work through that, then, we can move relatively quick. But there's times, obviously, throughout the year and working through the winter, it's very difficult. So, other questions? I didn't have any more cards.
I have a question online if you'd like me to go ahead and answer it.
Hang on one second here, Michelle. So Miss Mitchell had a question in the room, and I want to make sure that we address it. She expressed the timing of the project and just, wishing it could have happened much sooner. And we certainly agree with you. We wish that it would have happened much sooner, but unfortunately, I think as Michelle and Michael had mentioned, a lot of that's dictated on the NCDOT funding schedules. There's not a lot we can do about that. As you know, this past year, there were some really difficult times with NCDOT regarding funding, and a lot of projects got postponed. This is one that we were fortunate enough to be able to at least to continue design on. There are many projects, ones that we had that were halted, and we haven't begun work back yet on because of the current funding situation. So though I share your concern, this is one where I'm at least able to share with the group that we were able to at least keep work on this project and maintain some level of schedule. So again, I apologize it's not sooner, but we did everything we could to keep it moving. And I'm sorry, you had one question too. What's your name? Phil Goodman. That is correct. We're so the mass majority of traffic that would come up Little Texas would not continue up Little Texas to Brantley Road. It would go Ruth, then to Brantley, and then to Lane. And the reason behind that is because there's a signalized intersection that's being planned at Ruth. So, I think we talked about the connectivity, that north to south connectivity from Dale Earnhardt Boulevard to Loop Road. And if you look at it, you've got multiple schools that are along that chain that will now be interconnected, which is a small section of sidewalk to the further north across Loop Road. So you're going to have the ability to be able to walk literally from Dale Earnhardt Boulevard to at some point all the way to Jackson Park Road.
So Wilbur, just to let you know, I've asked Alex to pull up the design map for the Ruth end of the project. And so we can zoom in and look at anything that you all need to or ask questions.
Yeah,
And
please
then
pull that up.
And then
quick
the
for
one
Mr.
question we got online was whether or not the sidewalk would be on both sides, and that's not correct. It's only on the eastern side. So only
That is
one
correct.
side of the roadway will get the sidewalk, and it's on the eastern side.
And again, what we're trying to do is take benefit of the existing network that's already in place. You saw that map where we had the red line, and then there were gaps or skips that were in there where we have existing infrastructure. We want to take advantage of that, and that way get the project built to the fullest extent. Mr. McClory?
I don't want you to know. And how did you do mine?
So if the road were widened, I mean, what we're doing now is we're looking at, so at some point we'd love to have sidewalk on both sides. And as development occurs on the opposite side, you know, we certainly could add sidewalk to that side, but you could certainly see it. But I think if you were widening, we're setting it up so that all you would need is the opposite side of the road to widen it to the correct. Yeah. So, I mean, that's what we're doing. If this were a solely roadway widening project, you'd have equilateral widening, so both sides of the roadway. But in this case, we're building that side as a part of this project. So all that would be needed is opposite. Yep. Yes, sir. The east side. So if you were going from, if you were going down Little Texas Road from Lane Street, it would be on the left. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, and what's your name, sir? Mr. Myers? Okay, what's your question? So, and I'm sorry, your name again, sir? Jason. All right, his question was, with the DOT funding situation, is this project subject to, and we called it rescission, but losing funding? Right now, the project is funded, so certainly anything's possible. But right now, it's got design funding, we've got right-of-way funding and construction funding. Now, that certainly could change. I can't guarantee you that they're going to give us, you know, funding if something else happens, but right now the project is funded. I apologize, I can't guarantee it, but right now it is funded. And we don't anticipate losing it. Are there any questions online? Michelle, Michael?
Hello.
I see someone, Gerard Dry, is that right?
Yes, this is Mrs. Hogan. I'm using his phone. I apologize for being late, but I've been trying to get on since about 5 minutes to 7, so I missed a lot of it. But what I wanted to know was, I heard when you was talking about if you was coming down Little Texas Road from Lane Street, that you're talking about on the left side of the road. So is that where we're talking about doing sidewalks because the road is so narrow you can't do both sides? I just want to, you know, get in right there. I don't want you to go over everything. Maybe I can get some information later on.
Yes, ma'am. So the sidewalk will be on the east side. It's on the Living Water side of the project. So if you were coming from Lane Street down towards Dale Earnhardt Boulevard, it would be on the left-hand side.
Okay. Thank you.
And all of this information will be available online. The project slides that you see, our communications director is going to have that up on the city's website for everybody to take a look at.
Okay, thank you so much.
I don't see any more questions online. Is there anyone else who would like to ask anything?
Hang on one second. I've got one in the room. Go ahead, Annette. Okay, so Annette just reminded me that the meeting is recorded, so everything that you've heard, you can go back and you can certainly listen to. Also, the slides that you just saw, those are going to be up on the city's website as well. So if anybody needs to view that, it'll, again, on the website, and or again, feel free to reach out to Elizabeth. Mr. Mack? Okay. So I had a question from Mr. Mack in the room. Michelle, Michael, I'll let you answer it. He asked, would this project improve the safety at El Paso and Little Texas Road?
Mhm. It's down south. There you go.
There you go, right there.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Just in that curve there.
Right. So we're not doing any realignment. So I would say there's no real safety improvements other than since we're adding curb and gutter and a berm, you're not going to have if there's a ditch section there or the existing features, whatever happens to be there right now, it would be a little bit safer if you were to run off the road because you would have that recoverable distance behind the curb. But since we're not changing any of the roadway alignments there's not really any safety associated with roadway improvements.
Does that answer your question? Okay.
If there is a noted safety issue there, I would suggest making note of it in some comments back to us, and we can always feed that and keep a record of that for the city and for DOT. Because other projects that get funded someday might want to know of safety issues.
Mr. Mack, if you could maybe note what your concerns are, elaborate a little bit on that, we'll take that in the record and we'll make sure that we discuss it with Division 10. Mr. Goodman, you got a question? That is correct. There's no planned improvements on that portion of Little Texas. Sorry, guys, I answered that question for you. I thought it was pretty easy.
I got another question from online from Beryl Torrance. Will there be bike lanes? And the answer is not at this time. Correct, Mike?
That's correct.
I have another question in the room from Ms. Wilkerson. The last that I've heard on the Lane Street project is they're looking at doing that sometime spring of the year, and it could be a little bit later, but it'll be during their paving season, the last that we heard. Yes, ma'am. That's the one that's in the curve right there. Okay, so it's on the same side as the church. And what's your name, ma'am? Miss Klutz. So, Annette, I hope you're taking some notes. Miss Klutz asked the question about the location of the sidewalk, which side of the road it'll be on. So it's on the same side as the church. Are there any other questions? Mr. Goodman? Right. Well, and Michael, Michelle, you might want to address, we tried to accommodate that as much as possible, and certainly being sensitive to the impacts. You saw some of the retaining walls and other things that we were adding. So we tried to get as wide a lane as we could without calling it a bike lane that's in place. But certainly it's enough that you could share the road, but it's not a dedicated bike lane. Is that
I have another question. I have another question online about any plans for adding speed bumps. And again, like the other improvements we've talked about, that's not proposed at this time. It sounds like you might have a question about speeding or speeders, maybe. And that might be a good thing to put a more detailed comment to Elizabeth Hassenfritz to indicate what your concerns are.
And on a road like that, Michelle, we certainly would not support, and we don't, the installation of speed bumps. I mean, if there's an issue that's out, that's a matter of enforcement that's in place and not installing speed bumps. In fact, now, in order to get approval for speed bumps, humps, any of that has to get the approval of the fire department. I'll share with the community, we get that request a lot. And what we tell people is that with the installation of speed humps or bumps, it reduces the emergency response time. So, you know, you want to make sure that those individuals can get to you as quick as possible for whatever means or need. So we certainly don't necessarily encourage those, particularly on a road like Little Texas, and they wouldn't qualify. Okay. Mr. McClory?
If you'd like, we can put up the other map for the other section just to show y'all. If you go ahead and do that, Alex.
Yeah, so certainly. So Mr. McClure's question is with the installation of sidewalk, would we be looking at lighting along this corridor? And the answer to that's yes. Upon completion of the project, we'll look at strategic locations where we need to add additional lighting along the area. And Ms. Wilkerson had another question about potential speeding along the road and could we add additional speed limit signs? We'll take a look at that once the project's complete, where we strategically locate signs from Dale Earnhardt Boulevard. Of course, that has to be in conjunction with NCDOT, but we'll take a complete inventory and look at that upon completion of the project. Right. 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 Well, and we certainly can look at where we strategically locate them, but you know, per state law, unless it's otherwise posted, they know what that speed limit is, and they should be doing that speed limit. You know.
We have another question in the room from Jared. If you'd like to ask it, Jared.
I believe that was Miss Hogan.
Oh yeah.
She was
I
on
think she's
mute.
using Jared's phone.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Yes, this is Miss Hogan. I heard what someone was saying about their concern about the speed limit on Little Texas. My concern, which I called probably back in November of 2020, I was concerned about the area right here at the corner of East First Street and Little Texas, basically right in front of Living Waters driveway. We've had several accidents out there, but between my house and the house on the corner at 100 Little Texas, we have about, I want to say about 7 children between us. And I was wondering, is it possible that we can get a caution light there? Because there are times that speeders come down that road and they have no respect for, you know, for the speed limit. And we've had several accidents out there. So that's my concern. And so I was just wondering, is that something we could talk about later on? Is it a possibility it could come about? Or where do we go if that was something that we need to implement?
I would say we can make that request to NCDOT. That's not a city decision to add a caution light at that location. Because that's an NCDOT facility. Certainly we're allowed to upgrade on this facility, but adding a caution light would be at their discretion. So we certainly can take that as a part of your comments and concerns and express that to NCDOT for their consideration.
Thank you so much.
Are there, Mr. Goodman? So Mr. Goodman's comment was one of appreciation to getting this project moving forward. I have to give that thanks to our city council that has lobbied long and hard for this project, Ms. Mitchell and many others in the community that have come to a number of council meetings and expressed the concern and desire of this community to have sidewalk along this area. It's a project that we've had on our list for a long time, so we are truly excited to see it move forward very soon. And I wish I could promise Ms. Mitchell that it would conclude sooner than 2023, and we'll do what we can, but unfortunately that's the date unless things change. But we're as excited as all of you to have this project move forward as quickly as possible. Any other questions, comments, or concerns that we can address this evening? Any online?
That was it, I believe.
Well, with that, I thank everyone for being here this afternoon. And again, all of this information, as well as this recorded meeting, will be on the city's website. So again, if you can view all the information there. And if you have other questions, please reach out to our project engineer. Thank you all and have a great evening.
Yes, thank you.